It's so hot. Mia shouted. This is like Satan's armpit. Quit shouting. Her friend shouted at her. We're almost there. Just as she said, a cold breeze swept through them, and they all breathed a sigh of relief. That's the waterfall I was talking about, Carmela exclaimed and dropped her bags. I'm going in first, shouted Kelly and plunged into the ice-cold water. One by one, the three girls shouted and jumped into the water, screaming in delight. After some time, they all got off the water, and as they were starting to change, Kelly pointed at a figure. Hey! The other girls looked up and saw the figure. Get out of here. We're changing. The figure quietly walked away and the girls giggled amongst themselves. They had dinner plans that night, which they heartily enjoyed. Once outside, they were planning on hitting a 24/7 family diner to catch up on some drinks. Luckily for them, there was no one in the diner and they had the freedom of chatting with the owner's wife. That was when Mia asked for any information about the place they were staying at. Stories, huh? The room suddenly seemed dimmer, and the woman seemed lost in thoughts. Before this, I was a stockbroker on the mainland. Who got you here? Carmela asked, love. The woman smiled. As you know, this place is called GAM, and it has 3 zones. Each zone has its own stories about apparitions, sightings, and hauntings. Some stories even made it to the state's front line, but I bet 90% forgot about it already. We'll remember, Mia said. The woman smiled and replied, that's cute. People forget, and for those who remember, they never return to their normal lives. Tell us the story, Kelly said, and the woman smiled. Before GAM was broken into 3 zones, it was a single village. Over time, people drew the lines, and the connection between these 3 places broke. Zone 3 was primarily a farming community and Zone 1 was mostly commercial, so the only thing that tied them together was Zone 2, and that was where most of the stories are from. Before becoming a zone under the Indian Constitution, the village was occupied in World War II by the Japanese. On the day of the occupation, the Japanese performed a ritual to secure the place, but the ritual was disturbed by advancing small troops. It took place on the higher elevation of the village, and the survivors heard the screech and howling of something out of this world. The Allied won the war, and so life moved on. After news of the ritual spread, people came to look at this place. One by one, all of them took shreds of evidence and learnings and left the place never to return. Most of them termed the place rubbish, and others just lost interest. Those who did come back never went back to the mainland. All of them died mysteriously, but then there were a lot of things going on, so it was ruled out as an accident. A few visitors a few years ago thought it would be great to conduct a test of courage. 3 of them went up. Only one returned to the steps of the local priest. On one hand, he was holding the hand of one of his friends, and on the other's hand. The girls listened intently, and the woman smiled. It's just a warning. She said, don't go up there. Even if you did, it is heavily protected, so you'd have no chance. What actually goes on there? Mia asked. A being lurks there. She replied, something that is not human-made, nor is it made by nature. They sat for a few while, and then made their way out of the diner. After going far, Carmela stopped. I want to go there. In the dark background, one can see the even darker shape of the hill. Mia and Kelly looked at each other. I really want to go there. Carmela added, it's pulling me in there. I was curious too. Mia agreed, and Kelly sighed, only a peek. Somehow, in their heels and short dresses, they made it to the electric fences and looked around. This is as far as we go, Mia said, but Carmela was ready to climb the wall. Kelly panicked and pulled down the girl. You'll get electrocuted. Don't you remember why we're here? Carmela said, we're here to go wild. Carmela, you're deranged. Mia shouted. Before you. Carmela laughed and ran in front. The 3 girls ran in, laughing and jeering each other, but after a while, they quieted down. I have a bad feeling, Mia said. You're always worried, Mia. Carmela laughed. No, seriously, Mia replied. Isn't it a little too silent? I'm tired. Kelly sat on an elevated platform and sighed. It has always been like this. They all sat on the surface, taking in the air and breathing when they heard voices. Quickly, they turned around to see a group surrounding a pillar. They watched as the dark crowd silently stood in front of the pillar for a while more, then silently walked away. I'm curious. Kelly said, let's go see. Carmela said, and they walked up to the pillar to see what it was. To their dismay, it was only a cemented pillar. Guys, Mia's voice sounded distant. We're in a graveyard. That stopped the other two, and they looked around. Pillars and headstones filled the place. Mia looked closely, and soon dust seemed to fall in tiny portions in the shape of letters. Carmela. It read. Then the same thing happened to the one next to it. The letters formed. Kelly. Mia turned around. Carmela. Kelly, let's go back. There was no answer. Carmela? No answer. Kelly? No answer. The sudden realization that Mia was alone sent shivers down her spine. There were multiple crunching sounds, and Mia bolted out of there. She ran, and once she climbed the wall. The crunching sound continued, and she jumped off and landed on something soft. Breathing hard, she pushed herself up and looked down. This time she did scream. Carmela and Kelly were sprawled out in front of her, their throats slashed. The next thing Mia knew was that it was morning, and she was in front of the previous night's 24/7 diner, with Carmela's and Kelly's heads under her arms. The ritual only attracts 3 people, and out of those 3, only the lucky one will return. And the lucky one will be the one to lure in the next 3. The ritual only attracts 3 people, and out of those 3, only the lucky one will return. And the lucky one will be the one to lure in the next 3.